Hello, welcome to Put Your Ears On, a show which concentrates on Los Angeles poets and poetics of the poets living here. Some of my guests in the past have been Harry Northup, Holly Prado, Leland Hickman, Aleida Rodriguez, Richard Garcia, Suzanne Lummis, and Jim Crusoe. I'll have many other poets in upcoming shows, including poets like Bob Flanagan and Jack Grapes. Today I'm going to read a section from a long poem that I've been working on for a number of years. The poem is called Barely Holding Distant Things Apart, and this section is entitled Ball of Tension. The first of many, but how many? Distinguishing a pattern after 2 or 3 lines is impossible, since the reader doesn't know how often these sentences will end in a question mark. The day after I shave my mustache off, I spread the cream on my cheeks and chin, but don't cover my upper lip, since while shaving, I still think it's there. Filled with yellow packets of mounted photographs, a linen hamper is pushed from behind across the street to the store's new location. Turtles crawl up the AstroTurf ramp to the rectangular tub of water. A bee burner jets its bullwhip. Blue gas like 7 spokes of birthday candles. Vanilla wafers in the redwoods. But how did they get there? For you all-night movie freaks, caffeinated popcorn. Wet hair of children squawking and squealing in the swimming pool. Give it to me! Give it to me! Give it to me! Thirsty ants scale one side of the pentagonal vase, white beneath red lilies and bachelor buttons. Scrub in pinion. Stellar jays wafer a millennium. After it catches on, decaffeinated popcorn. The first to catch my attention softened my long-standing opposition. Is that primer smearing green on paper towels? Pushed from behind, I glide down the velvet slope. Inaccessible, blurred. Derek brought 3 plastic bags, half filled with hamburger buns. He asked if we want to help him feed the ducks in the pond. We tear the buns into bits and hurl them over a fringe of grassy embankment 3 ducklings scoot out from under. Derek skips a bottom half of a hamburger bun across the pond between the ducks. 5 hops with a hamburger bun. He says he does it all the time, but I've never seen it done before. Used cards, 50 cents. The 12th deck, free. Hammer. Hammer hitting foil. Hammering garlic inside tin foil on a breadboard above splattered kitchen floor. Like all toothed whales, the common dolphin uses echolocation, sending out clicking sounds that hit an object and bounce back as echoes. Origins, not obscure, but elemental. A baby elephant's skull, given away at a clearance sale. Why do I want a turquoise ring so much? I stalk the cat, sleeping on the porch between the door and rocking chair. A spider repels from the roof beam to a hibiscus bush. On the kitchen table, the yellow-brown stone I lifted from the creek bed dampens. Slightly spongy railroad ties trestle. The ultimate pine cone, the source of all pine cones, appears in the sky, eclipsing the sun and daylight moon. You slowly walk toward gulls clustered on sand. The flock's edge struts away, giddy with the tug to flight. You charge and the flock churns towards the next lifeguard tower, boarded up. Clouds shade themselves with delicate grays and mauves. As waves pull back, tiny holes dot their withdrawal. The ultimate pine cone, but not the original, is still visible, but fading. Avocado burritos for each of us, and vanilla ice cream cones. Up, high up, as high as 5 palm trees. The clock of the flock undulates, ravenous and tense. Hand-whipped over strawberries. The ice chest sloshes with half-melted ice cubes. A, K-A, K-A. The root of a stunt palm is roped to a garbage bin in the alley. The limited vocabulary of a half second. Halley's Comet is visible from where right now? To be with God on his many adventures before creation? A voice inside me reads out loud to my mind. I read as though I'm listening to the radio, each word pronounced. The voice is different, not as deep. A farewell party in a Masonic lodge. A co-worker is going back to Louisiana. His right hand in a cast, he dances near the picnic tables. The DJ owns the sound system. Parties hired out for fun. The masochism of the working class. I want to feed the hand that bites me. The top of the bathwater cakes sweat. A red aster wilts near an aquarium. A vase is a bicycle with a flower tied to its handlebar. You dig holes in sparse grass in front of the apartment. The roses in the front row died. Every day but Wednesday. Lifeguards widened the V of red plastic cones spreading from their tower. Justin and I riptided toward a southern tower. About face, oceans of lotion, sporadic punctuation of a rough draft. Footsteps clanging on a fire escape mingle with a helicopter's throb. A hot day fades heated sand. The anticipation of a sentence's decay considers memory. Pink makes love to pink. Does a sentence exist if it's not being read? A pencil arrives. The departure of the space ahead of the next word. I don't know the joke exactly. I love you, she says, as the milk dribbles down my chin. I used to be ashamed of saying, I don't get it. Immortal soul. What an odd thought. I cannot die. To live forever, whether I want to or not. Clouds separate the winds into above, below. Existence is the fantasy of being. On a flatbed truck, the rear tire of a tractor is flat, and the rubber squished to one side, bulging like a distorted pancake. The hub of the wheel beneath gleams enough to shave in. Yellow chrysanthemums bound in a corner of a red pickup truck. Windshield wipers prush raindrops to the side. We stare at flowers not because of their beauty, but because they can look at the sun without going blind. An amulet of thin, stringy kelp with small pebbles webbed in the twist. Memory laughs at its autobiography. Both thumbs could be used for more than hitting the space bar. A partial list of friends. An orange afterglow wobbles to the window. The curtains open and shut like an elevator door. Pink blurs the tongue. Drenched socks squish as he walks across the room. Thin, pale, papery flakes drifting to the dirt. Delicate brown veins radiating from the kernel seed. Pods fall from a Chinese elm, mingling with the bristly stamens of a willow. The ice that was free last night cost $0.25 tonight. A syllable bites its way through air. Time is how many words you hear. Trimming my beard for a scene in the film so that my face appears lopsided in the dream sequence. I shave it all off, to sleep with my lover. Why did they have to cast someone with such big breasts? I like the sound of writing with a pencil. The ideal reading would have the sound of my writing this sentence playing in the background. The sound of the pencil would be far behind the sound of my voice by this point. By page 42, I barely would have finished 42 paragraphs. Walking on wet sand, yellow seaweed at the border of high tide, a heavy wool sweater drums heat back into my body. The white on their bellies creases up their hind legs, right towards their behinds. Black cows bend their heads and eat beside a tin shed. Doves and carob trees. What verb could do more than your imagination? 4 spiders' bellies towards dawn on webs cupped between periwinkle twigs. Bill's favorite thirst quencher, fresh squeezed orange juice, spiked with Poland spring water. I kissed her a long time, and then she said, let's finish this. I wanted to ask her afterwards, did you know that was my first time? I told the other actors I'd never taken any drugs. Peter said, you've never taken acid? I've never taken any drugs, I said. Later, Peter told Susan, Bill said he's never taken any drugs. He's probably taken so many, he just thinks he hasn't taken any. A boxing glove tied to the trailer knob of a pickup's bumper, a slab of perforated paper beside the bus's exit, a combination lock clamped through steel cable on a bicycle rack, the chain derailed. Quote, bourgeois grammar, hysterical vocabulary, unquote. Criticism as a response to reputation. sentences which completely erase the verb. An idea outlines the verb of death, language slowing down to tepid, creation of an imaginary space. Odysseus must be understood as a comic, as a braggart, comic. Beginning quotation marks remind me of a southpaw's curveball. She won $6,000 cash in the pyramid scheme, wrapped it up in tin foil, and stashed it in the freezer of her refrigerator. If the house caught on fire, the money won't burn. I couldn't finish the book. I couldn't even finish the first chapter. Jobs that grind the mind. The bus heaves uphill. Drunks are hazing the driver. He gets on the phone, but that doesn't scare them. Get off the bus and we'll see how tough you are, they taunt him. He mumbles, this bus is barely running. And then I get them. Gas pedal floored, the bus edges along like a balloon with a slow leak. A large number of molecular clouds form a spiral arm that stretches for 30,000 light years. Ranging in distance from 30,000 to 40,000 light years from Earth, these clouds had not been seen before because observations had been concentrated in the flat extensions of the disk or plane of the Milky Way. An estimated diameter of 100,000 light years and a thickness of 15,000 light years. The stuntman didn't land on the X, marked on the 40 by 15-foot airbag at the bottom of the Bronson Canyon quarry. Tiny white beads at the end of her braids tap the back of her suede jacket. My eyes are distracted by the rainbow arcs of black and red numbers intersected by columns on the counter scale a foot behind her. The beads go out of focus. How visible is the world if only 2 square feet is in focus at any given X of time? Radiant dimensions beget roofs. Flavor sinks into leftovers. Can unity exude sequence? Each word hired by the eye quits. Sponges in plastic bags thaw on forehead bumps. A premonition more specific than an eventual repository. A barber blow-dries cut hair along the rear of 6 chairs. Back seat weeds, red pots. Is the food always this good? Fortunately, only 1 hour left. Shod, trome, slip bone. A drummer stood on the piano bench for the final bow. Coincidence replenishes back inside job burner, methodical foreigner. The illusion of minimum wage desecrates toil's proportions. The variable sentence laughs at intruders. Biscuit abyss, terrestrial breath. A crutch taps the ceiling lamp until its beam swivels onto scripts. Sequence extrudes a posture list. Fired words barge in. Unable to pinpoint the exact location of tremors, the configuration of electric fields has been shown to correspond exactly to the visual shape of auroras. Like a breaching whale, a huge red column leaps into the crimson. As I walk near the low tide's lapping waves, the pearl gray cloud reflected on the wet sand accompanied me stride for stride. Shouldn't that cloud be reflected at only one point on the beach? He's a quick study, the producer said on the telephone. I've nearly broken her favorite cup so many times I don't know how it's lasted. Turkey burp as my eyes move one by one down the row of 28 pebbles. The audience is just as temporary, is just as imaginary as my characters, the novelist said. Sunlight smudged in lumpy clouds. Sometimes when I'm very tired, the heel of my palms resting beneath the space bar, I feel my hands switch places. Adoration participates in the limitations of worship. Susceptible variants model definitions kilter. An exclamation point is a vowel. Designated aperture. A dreary sky extricates benign trees, lime against gray. Hoses bleacher down Sunday morning. Enclosed are assurances that these purposes will not be used for military weapons. Quote, the last bus back to the base on Saturday night was called the Vomit Comet. Botched lottery numbers revolve in losers' debts. Your eyes ride the ridge. A sentence tells us what happened before we see it happen, but the sound of the sentence is instantaneous. He scraped the sides of the burnt toast. Water drips into a paper cup beneath a fire hydrant. You toss the water high overhead and it loops down on a crosswalk. Nouns perceive other nouns and create imaginary space. Young snakes fight old snakes beside the Thames, a muddy creek. a carousel 8 feet above the ground, and a Frank Lloyd Wright house perched on a bluff. A fish says, "The fish are too dry to eat." Would I have had this dream by the time the alarm clock sizzled if I had gone to sleep an hour later? A coat hanger notched around the knob of an alarm clock's buzz, the keys in the ignition. Mosquitoes learn not to land on walls. Towed vehicles can be picked up at, by any stretch of the imagination. I don't trust myself, so why wouldn't I suspect the motives of other hard-ons? Folding chairs aligned with auditorium linoleum, sidestep to a standstill. Gondolas stenciled on a shower curtain. Jitters distracted by a grid, avoid transitions. When I started out, I had the hope of making a real field to my contribution. Does an ad exist if no one buys any brand of exposed workers? A lamp is literal. 3 cups of coffee in my bladder. Oh, it feels good to piss. He shaves the black stubble of his 3-day-old beard with a dull razor. An orange-red glow drifted down from the bellies of clouds and hung above the horizon in a brief smudge. Shopping carts surround the car in the flood-lit parking lot. I can't get to the car except by crawling over the carts, bound to each other by thin strands of wire. I unlock the door on the driver's side, squeeze through and start the car. The carts don't budge, even when I press the accelerator to the floor. The car squirms in the circle of carts, a sound unmistakably distinct, a chainful of car and house keys smacking a wooden floor, linoleum, or pavement asphalt. As Cathay swerved Luna Dean Ray around the bicyclist, we heard the bicyclist drop his keys. Distinct, but mistakable. I tossed the empty can of shaving cream into the wastebasket, smashing a light bulb. The crash scared the cat away from the wall heater. Which is the real audience? The sentence before this one or the sentence after? No such luck. Second home. In the New Year's Eve kitchen, a man with long blonde hair was filling plastic bags with nitrous oxide. Do you want some? I shake my head and wander back to the living room. The only child at the party was kicking a small blue ball against the wall, then chasing it around the room with a dog, Marcel Duchamp. The dog gets tired and the child goes over to the Christmas tree, stripped of its ornaments. It is hanging upside down from the ceiling of the otherwise barren dining room. She takes a branch in her hands and breathes deeply, savoring the smell. An organization proposed that a few orcas would be outfitted with radio transmitters and tracked while most would be branded, using freon gas, liquid nitrogen, or dry ice. Peninsulas of clouds buffered by twilight's furry light. Sand puckers pebbles as surf rolls back into the ocean's tambourine. Italian and Floridian. Smooth move is often pronounced smooth move. A thin white sheet, gleaming, retreats past the pebbles. Orphan boys draw 2 centuries' worth of lottery numbers from a revolving drum. Standing on the Palisades, look north along the Santa Monica Mountains. Pretend that your eyes meet and a pencil's lead point, tracing the mountain's ridges 25 miles away. Make certain the pencil traces every notch. Beneath the observer, an overturned rowboat holds down plastic sheeting on the long roof of a beachfront building. Compared to what? Like peeling a very ripe banana. Driving back from her to work, I see her lipstick on my cheek stubble in the rearview mirror. Kneeling on square boards as he smooths the freshly poured cement floor, ash drops off his cigarette. He wipes the ash into the wet gleam. You are a paragraph in the middle of this book. What do other paragraphs look like to you? Imagine you are print. Reading this, you are print. A personal watermelon waits in a refrigerator for a spare tire next to a jacked-up bumper. I don't suspect myself, and I trust the motive of my hard-on. A German shepherd leaps onto the lawn. A fuzzy tennis ball skips down the sloping roof. Pop, pop, the ball goes on the roofing, and the dog comes down exactly on the beat. Tiring on the 10th lap, my eyes looked in front of my feet. I jerked my head back with a deep breath, focused on a patch of dirt 20 yards in front of me, and let that spot pull my body towards it. I stared at the spot until my foot landed on it, And then I looked ahead again and focused on a spot until my foot landed on it. And then I looked ahead again, repeating the sequence until I finished the race. Next to last. Every other Saturday, dead calf's corner. She got up from the couch alongside the large front window of compost burritos and says, "My order wasn't to go." The counterman looks at her, takes the styrofoam box out of the paper bag, puts it on a brown tray, opens it, throws chips on top into the side of the tostada, flips the lid off her Coke and says, "Here you are." People are driving lousy today. You have a button missing. It popped off while I was dressing and it was my last clean shirt. The physical sensation of this house on a hill turning on an axis so that the sun comes into view. I saw the orbit of the earth reveal the sun. A punk's mohawk, curved with blonde dye, has grown back out and is evenly cut over his skull. A pair of L's, like cigarettes shaken from their pack. Subdued expectations derive the appearance of occult solvents. Not every sentence can be deranged. 8 on 10 means over $300 in the cash register. A stutter encounters a luscious vowel. Dwelling in consecutive sentences permeates the creation of imaginary space. Of last month's 16 canceled checks, I can see where I was standing when I wrote 14 of them. A florist bandaged forefinger replaces gladiolas in the refrigerated vase. Ordinary dwelling in consecutive spaces. Should that be singular or plural? The singular's derangement into ambitious disguises. A mouth retrieves absurd simplicity, but nothing can retrieve the original ratio. Beatific absurdity, interrupted limits. The plastic bag of bubble bath soap won't tear, so the fingernail clipper is put to work. Also known as Kitty Alley. Fate, rereading it with the same results. Lifeguard towers pulled back to the cinder block wall by the bike path. My innermost ambivalence deteriorates. Otherwise enough already about that shows signs of tampering or request must be shown upon. At the slightest touch, a pile of towels drying upside down falls apart. Of those for you who started recently, torrential ventilation. Know what I'd have done, how she can get. Can't stand to live in the midst of all this. The game of the name is I like it like that. Parking meters obscured by Lot's hedge. Shovel scrapes weeds off alley pavement. Pushboard cushions, pins of color. Porous eyes score the play. Green tambourine. Any ideas ahead of where this is going? Just as many as behind. Exactly half? Almost. Forms filled out, the line squirms. License photo flashes reflecting plates. Pink roses poke through hedge above parking meters. Like it like. The line behind me longer than when I arrived. An employee smiles at strangers. The form of the idea is contained within, yet separate from, the idea of form. More work than I can handle effortlessly shows up on telephone promise of future. Toast sniffed from sofa. Even scribbling, I think. Tuck that O under the T. Telephone rings as toast pops up. The only strangers who will accept my check without a credit card are the IRS and DMV. Pale touch and go, Pendleton dust, helicopters into overcast. Quote, you'll rust out faster than you'll wear out, unquote. A being whose language frums? Shorn of abode, penis fingers memory, sunset, ordinary stride of the bride. But I'm already wet, the 6th kid said, standing by the creek. He jumps, but doesn't make it either. From C to G, 2 more than normal. Newspaper wrapped around carnations, backing up, beeping. Filtered water squirts from the vending machine. A young girl gets off a mechanical car ride and slides down the rods of an empty bicycle rack. Behind her, a clerk arranges hoses for the steam vacuums. Fleas vomit the sound of their being crushed. The swipe of a knife across the edge of a glass jar bulges extra raspberry jam. The struggle is often to hand on power and property to your flesh and blood, yet how many direct descendants have maintained the original, let alone increased it after 300 years? Crawls superimpose on the image with a minimum of visual interference. Emperor penguins are austral winter nesters. An egg is transferred to the male and incubated on top of their feet, which is covered by a muscular fold of abdominal skin. For 2 months, the temperature is minus 80 degrees centigrade. On the ice shelf, the male fasts for 3 to 4 months and lose 1/3 to 1/2 of their body weight. I want to thank you very much for listening to Put Your Ears On and this segment which I've just read from a long work in progress. Please join me again for another program when I'll have for my guests such poets as John Doe, Bob Flanagan, Jack Grapes, and many others. I look forward to your joining the program. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.